for today's NET conference, Donna Smallwood. Donna?
Thanks, Jennifer. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our, can you believe it, 29th NET conference. We have a great program today on instant carpooling. We're going to learn a lot about slugging and body snatching, things that you don't get to hear about in our work every single day. Here's the advertising. This program is brought to you by the Association for Commuter Transportation in partnership with the National Center for Transit Research, which is at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida. We like to welcome everyone from between 35 and 40 sites across the country. We think we have between 150 and 200 participants today, which speakers tells me that this is a very popular topic. This is one of the largest programs that we've had so far. We plan to start out with some quick polls in just a minute, and then presentations, starting with Mark Oliphant, who's going to give us a little bit of an overview, and then a case study in Northern Virginia. Mark Burris talking to us about Houston, and Susan Heinrich talking to us about San Francisco. But before we move into the real content of the program, we'd like to get a little bit of a sense of kind of who's out there and what your knowledge before we start is of instant carpooling. So in most cases, there are groups of folks watching this program together, and so we'd like you to do a quick head count and let us know how many folks are in the room. Among other things, this helps us estimate what our audience is. So as you touch the screen, we're watching the numbers jump around a little bit. And it sounds as though we have a couple of sites with a big crowd, 8 to 10 folks, another 6 or so sites with something between 5 and 7, and most of the sites are smaller with just 2 to 4 folks. So that gives us a sense of what the audience looks like. We'd also like some sense of what your community is like. Does your community have either high occupancy vehicle or high occupancy toll lanes? That gives us some sense of whether the infrastructure that might support instant carpooling exists in your community or not. So it looks like about 2/3 of us have that infrastructure and about 1/3 doesn't. And maybe the third that doesn't is jealous of the 2/3 that do. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to see. And finally, in our third poll, we'd like to know, have you slugged? Have you done it? Have you ever had the experience of being a casual carpooler? And we'd be surprised if we had too many of you out there who had been. And I'm betting, Phil, that the numbers on the slides are actually the attendance numbers. So, oh no, how many people in the room have actually casual carpooled? Well, we have some casual carpoolers in the group. Excellent. So the folks that have some experience will be able to perhaps chime in and ask some questions from a user perspective, in addition to our perspective of folks who perhaps organize or research this approach to getting folks where they want to go faster and economically. Okay, let's get right into the meat of the program, and what I'd like to do is start by introducing our speakers. First up, we have Mark Oliphant. Mark is a transportation and sustainability, does transportation and sustainability planning for the Department of the Navy in D.C. He has been actively involved in studying and promoting dynamic ride sharing, and he completed his master's thesis at Virginia Tech on the subject. Last fall, Mark organized a national tour, and many of the participants on the tour in our program today, that was supported by Federal Highway to look at dynamic ride-sharing in several major cities across the country, and he is the author of the forthcoming FHWA primer on dynamic ride-sharing. So Mark will be up first, followed by Dr. Mark Burris, who is an associate professor at the Department of Civil Engineering at Texas A&M, where he is also an associate research engineer at Texas Transportation Institute. Mark's main area of interest is travel behavior in response to pricing, particularly congestion pricing. Prior to joining Texas A&M, he worked at Cutter, I'm assuming with Phil Winters. He is a member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers, the Transportation Research Board's Congestion Pricing Committee, and TRB's Transportation Economics Committee. So that's Mark. And then finally, from San Francisco Bay Area, we're going to hear from Susan Heinrich. Susan is Program Manager for the Bay Area's Regional Rideshare Program with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. She is particularly interested in real-time ride-sharing and how casual carpooling, aka slugging, could be expanded to other areas using technology. She has managed the rideshare program's casual carpool research. She's implemented first one and is now working on a second pilot project on ride-sharing, real-time ride-sharing, and she conducted her graduate research in this area. So, knowledgeable speakers with lots to tell us, so let's get going. Mark, would you give us an overview of instant carpooling and some sense of how it works in D.C.?
I sure will. Thanks very much for that nice introduction. So I hope everyone can see the title slide, Overview and Slugging in D.C. We're going to get right into this. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the general gist of what this is, the history of it, and also just talk a little bit about carpooling as a mode in general. And sort of it's become a lost mode or a forgotten mode that I think really deserves some further attention because it's a great way to move people from A to B. So we'll move to the second slide. Let me tell you a little bit about carpooling in general. It's a great thing. It's a win-win for anyone involved, either in the carpool or outside. It's inexpensive. You've got no buses, trains, drivers, mechanics, bridges, and on to buy. Environmentally friendly. You got fewer emissions per passenger mile. You also have fewer vehicles, which translates to faster speeds and less pollution there. It reduces congestion, fewer vehicles. Less road space is needed and parking is needed, and you just have fewer vehicles beating up your infrastructure, so you have to replace it at a shorter interval. And then, of course, socially beneficial, and this one sort of gets overlooked, but it's actually a pretty important part of slugging and casual carpooling. So just a little background for you, moving to the third slide. Carpooling really came into existence in the United States, at least, during World War II, when it was heavily promoted during times of rationing. Gasoline, tires, and so forth were very scarce. And then it was kind of forgotten until the 1970s when we had these big oil shocks. The Arab embargo and so forth sent everyone scrambling for better ways to move people with less fuel and so forth. And then it was largely forgotten again until just the past few years when a lot of new technology and interest in sustainability have caused a reawakening of interest here. You know, one interesting note is it used to be a very dominant form of commuting. About 20% of commuters back in 1980 were getting to work via carpooling, and that number has really dropped off recently, which is can't be attributed to any one thing, though. You know, the costs of driving have dropped generally overall. And maybe, you know, as part of this bowling alone effect that we're all doing things more independently. Who's to say? But one interesting thing is that the slugging and casual carpooling, which came about in about the mid-1970s, has been robust and growing ever since then in general. So we'll go to the next slide. That's number 4. This is just a little graphic for you about traditional carpools. So if you can see on your left, here's any given neighborhood and any given bedroom community in an American city. And you've got people coming from their neighborhoods on their way to downtown to work. In your traditional carpools, you have a fixed number of people, you have fixed participants, and they do this on a recurring, consistent arrangement. So you can see you have a carpool A through E there, and on days when someone in carpool A can't participate, well, they don't know about carpool B or carpool C, and they never carpool with one another, even though they're making a very similar trip. They very well may be entering the highway on the exact same on-ramp within just a few minutes of one another and parking and working within close proximity of one another, but they act as completely independent entities. So that's, that's a good thing. It works out for a lot of people, but there are also some drawbacks to that. And so we'll go to the next slide. And this is just a cute little story about this. I can't see you rolling in the aisles, but and you can read it as well as I can. But the gist of it is you're stuck when you're in a traditional carpool. You don't have flexibility that you can gain from slight changes, I guess, and that's really the beauty of slugging and casual carpooling, is it gives you flexibility while still giving you all the same benefits of traditional carpools. So we'll move to the next slide. Your fundamentals of casual carpooling. This is driven by being a mutually beneficial relationship between riders and drivers. It is very different from hitchhiking. In hitchhiking, the passenger is receiving basically a charitable handout from the driver and is thus not in a position of power, more or less at the mercy of the driver, whereas slugging and casual carpooling are driven by mutually beneficial relationships. Most often, they occur with HOV or HOT lanes, where the driver needs passengers in order to qualify to use those lanes, and the passengers want to be carpool participants because it can get them to work faster, typically, and for less money than their next best options, which could be any number of things. It might be a commuter bus, it might be a rail, something like that. So it's driven by these strong incentives to individuals. They're not doing it, and this is based on research, they're not doing it because they love the environment or anything like that. Very often they have expensive parking downtown. Most participants do own a car, both riders and drivers. It's not that they don't own a car. It's just that a combination of benefits is so great that they decide that this is worth it for them. So let's look at the next graphic. This would be, I think, slide number 7. This then, if you think back to that other graphic, this is generally how it works. All those people in that neighborhood, instead of forming independent carpools, they come together to a common meeting place. This is usually a park and ride lot, perhaps a transit station, someplace convenient in the community that usually is quite convenient also to highway lanes or the HOV on-ramp. So you come to this meeting place, and then you form carpools as participants arrive. And you eliminate all the other unnecessary elements of a traditional carpool, because really all you need is 2 individuals in the same place with a common destination at the same time. So you come together, and whoever are the first 3 people at that meeting place, they form a carpool and they go. 3 more people arrive. You form a carpool and go. It's incredibly efficient, and it saves time for everyone involved. And then there's no obligation tomorrow. So if I casual carpool today, no one's looking for me tomorrow and expecting me to be in their carpool and needing me in their carpool in order to make the HOV. So it's extremely flexible, and that's really the beauty of it. We'll go to the next slide. So here's just some pictures for you to depict how this works. These were taken here in Northern Virginia at the Horner Road commuter lot. In the top left, you can see there's people waiting there as the cars, they queue to your right. You can't really see that. And then in the lower right, there's a picture of a car driving away that has just picked up some slugs. And literally within, about 100 feet of that line is a commuter bus line. And so people have great options here. They can wait in the slug line, and if they don't get a ride when the bus comes, they can hop on the bus, or vice versa. You can wait for the bus. If that doesn't come, get in the slug line, and you get to work. It gives people more options, more flexibility, and everyone likes that because no one really enjoys their commute. You want to make it as easy and efficient as possible. So in the afternoon, it's a very similar system. Now, one difference, though, is when you're dealing with downtown areas, you have less space for queuing and picking up passengers and so forth. Recently, the District of Columbia has undertaken some efforts to move some of the lines from the busy corridor like 14th Street here, which is what we're looking at, to less busy side streets where cars can safely pull off and queue. And this has actually been kind of an exciting new development because in the past, slugging was largely overlooked by most of the local governments and so forth. And, you know, in some ways that's a good thing because it works very well independently, but at the same time, just being mindful of it and weighing actions that you take and their effect on slugging, I think that can definitely be a help as well. So we'll go to the next one. Let me tell you about slugging in Northern Virginia. So back in the mid-1970s, the Shirley Highway first opened some restricted travel lanes down the middle of the highway. They were inbound in the morning, outbound in the evening, and originally just for buses. Then they decided, whoa, this is way underutilized. Let's open it up to HOV4s. And pretty much as soon as that happened, commuters along that corridor said to themselves, boy, this traffic is so bad, I will do anything to get on those managed lanes or HOV lanes and bypass all this traffic. And so literally from the start, they began to stop at bus stops and offer rides to people going the same direction. Now, fortunately, in D.C., there are a lot of common work areas like the Pentagon, for instance. 25,000 people work at the Pentagon. Many of them work along the 95 corridor. And I-95 literally stops within 100 yards of the Pentagon. You can just, it's a straight line trip, which is really terrific for participants. VDOT has done some numbers on this. They've estimated about 6,500 people from sending out consultants to count. I think there's probably some more than that, but you know, it fluctuates all the time depending on the weather, depending on the season. I know a lot of summer interns will slug to work and so forth. In talking in gross terms of origins and destinations, I believe this is the most extensive system, but let's look at it a little more in detail. Next slide. Let's see, is it loading? This is number 11 for you. This is a map of the distinct locations. You can see that jagged line. That demarcates. South of that line are morning pickup locations, and north of that are drop-off locations. And you can see there are about 24 of them. So anywhere from Fredericksburg, which is 50 miles south of Washington, D.C., to the Springfield area, which is maybe, 15 or so outside of the district line, people are getting picked up in the morning. Right now, there are 27 miles of HOV lanes south of D.C. So the people in Fredericksburg getting on the slug lines, really, it's only a little over half of their trip that they actually have the HOV benefit. But again, it's so beneficial to them to be able to qualify for those lanes that they will pick up slugs at that location. And we'll look at the next slide here too. So now number 12. This is really what drives slugging in the D.C. area. A fellow great guy, David LeBlanc, he's a retired military officer, has voluntarily run a website called sluglines.com. It's hyphenated. Which actually originally he set up to promote a little pamphlet that he wrote, a how-to for slugging, because he had slugged for a number of years and there was no central point of information. It was all spread word of mouth. And this has really become a terrific way to reach the people who slug, to disseminate information. I don't know if you can quite see on the slide, but this is a screen capture from within the past week and a half, and they have all kinds of announcements about things that are going on. For instance, we just lost a bunch of parking spaces at one of our very popular slug locations, Potomac Mills Mall. The mall had allowed commuters to park there, but they're going to be doing some construction, and so instead of 1,000 spaces available for commuters, they had to cut that to 250. And fortunately, through this website, which is this central clearinghouse for this really unorganized system, word was able to get out, and they worked with VDOT and so forth to find some new locations where people could park. So there's a lot of just innovative thinking going into this, a lot of I don't know what, I've used the term anarchy for it before, organic. This picture on the next slide, number 13, is actually from Potomac Mills lot, which it's interesting because people will come in and park, and as the lot fills up, they will, the line slowly moves down toward the mall, so people don't even have to walk very far. They figured out all these very clever ways of doing this. So, some things that are going on. I mentioned last year DDOT made a big effort to relocate the slug lines, try to make it better for both the traffic on the road and for safer, well-lit places for the slugs to wait. And then recently, with this loss of spaces, the government has been involved to help get new spaces. What they actually did is lease some space at a church, which is a brilliant idea because churches typically, most of their spaces are only used on Sundays or maybe a few days during the week, and so it's a great way to share a resource to use parking that's underutilized elsewhere instead of building a whole new park and ride lot or something like that. And likewise, it was a great idea to use these spaces at the mall that their lot probably only gets filled on the day after Thanksgiving and maybe Christmas Eve. But there's some big changes coming along, and you're going to hear from Mark Burris about changes in Houston that have affected the slugs in that city. But here in the D.C. area right now, some hot lanes are under construction on the Capitol Beltway. I actually think that there's a lot of fear about what might occur with these. But I think this may actually help expand the slugging system here in D.C. because there will be an incentive for carpools now on the Capitol Beltway, which there was not previously. And there's also some hot lanes planned for this same corridor, and there's been a lot of fear about that as well. But they're not going to go all the way into the district, and so I think they've found a happy medium that might be able to please all parties involved. So we'll go to the next slide. I just want to tell you very briefly, this is a new, well, actually it's not even that new, but this is what I call slugging 2.0, and it's, again, people who voluntarily have gone out and said, we can improve this even further. So number one, e-slug. I work here at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., and there is a slug line in the afternoon that departs from here, actually two on M Street, but people found it a little bit difficult. There wasn't quite enough volume, and so they formed a Yahoo listserv to help people here just at the Navy Yard and surrounding buildings make their afternoon connection. And so they will send emails to this listserv in the morning, say, hey, I'm looking for a ride back to the Horner Road lot at 3:30. Anybody going at that time? And people make their connections that way. The Roslyn slugs is even more, it's a little more complex. This fellow, Mike Burkhart, has done a really neat job. He's a computer programmer, and he has built a whole website where you can log in and put in a request for a ride every day, and then he then matches up riders and drivers who go to this Route 17 park and ride lot that they service in the afternoon is 45 miles from Roslyn. So you think that's a big advantage if people can carpool instead of paying a bus fare that's going to take them longer and use the bus. But, of course, the bus is there, too, as a backup. So those who don't get a ride match on a certain day, they can do that. Now, they also have the alternative of taking the metro to the Pentagon, and there is a line there, a slug line that serves the Route 17 park and ride line. So there's just a lot of creativity. I like to use the word organic around this system. It really does a good job of getting people to think in new ways. It's maybe this hive mentality or cloud mentality where everyone acting in their own self-interest, trying to have a better commute, can actually help one another. I like to think of it as the opposite of road rage. So just to wrap up here, here's a list of some great links if you want to find out more. All of those have great information, and then after that, this is my contact information. I love to talk about this stuff. The Navy is kind to tolerate my interest, and they do let me indulge in some of these things. So special thanks to the Highway Administration's Exploratory Advanced Research Program. They funded last year a great trip to learn more about slugging and look for more things to happen in the future. There's a lot of interest in technology-based dynamic ride sharing, so people using smartphones, pagers, text messages, and so forth, to create artificial versions of this system. So, we know that it can work if the right incentives are in place, and there's a lot of interest in seeing how maybe we can replicate it where we don't have the same sort of incentives in place that have made it appear organically in D.C., Houston, and San Francisco. So thanks for your time, and I'll look forward to questions once we're all through.
Thanks, Mark. What a nifty introduction and taste of how things operate in D.C. I guess that's the system that I have heard a little bit about in the past. And so, Mark Burris, I'm really interested to learn more about how instant carpooling works in Houston.
All right. And I want to thank Mark for organizing this tour. It was a really exciting tour and really opened my eyes to casual carpooling. I had been studying it off and on for about 10 years in Houston and thought it was an interesting research opportunity, but not this big impact on traffic congestion, because as you'll see, the Houston casual carpooling is relatively small compared to D.C. But when I got to see what was happening in D.C. and San Francisco, really opened my eyes to how this could be a very impactful form of travel and really make a difference on congestion. So I got very excited and motivated by this, not just from the research side of things, but from this could make a significant impact. So I will talk a little bit about what was going on in Houston and some of the work I did over the years there. We have 3 park and ride lots where the slugging occurs. Generally in the morning, people are traveling in from these park and ride lots into downtown Houston. There's 2 on Katy Freeway, which is I-10, and 1 on US 290, which is also called Northwest Freeway. Most of these occur between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., and I'll get into the details later, but during the peak of the peak, both of these freeways had higher occupancy requirements. They needed 3 or more people to be free HOV on the lane. And during the shoulder periods and all other periods, you needed 2 or more occupants to be a free HOV on the lane. And so the occupancy requirements changed, and so did the number of slugs getting in a car quite frequently change. On the return trips, most folks take transit back home, although there is a small proportion of them do slug back home. So to get you a layout of this site, let me see if I can work these. The 2 on Katy Freeway are down there, the Kingsland Park and Ride and the Addicts Park and Ride lot, and they're 12, 15 miles from the downtown area where folks are headed. And then Northwest Station's also about 13, 14 miles from downtown. And those are the park and ride lots where slugging occurs. It does not occur in any other lots. And why does slugging occur here? I can show you at least part of the reason looking at this map. This is also a map of the freeways in Houston. This one is color-coded to show you the average travel speed on that freeway for all work days in 2008. And this is the morning rush hour, 7:45 to 8. The little red lines there, that's less than 20 miles an hour. So I'm circling that on Northwest Freeway. That's the inbound to downtown. Has, on average, the speed is less than 20 miles an hour during this time of day. And, of course, there's worse days, there's better days, but for a year average, that's pretty bad. Katy Freeway, you'll see a lot of green here. That was under construction and pretty much finished construction at this time. I actually don't trust those numbers right there at all. They had ripped up and removed a lot of the sensors during that time. But before reconstruction on the Katy, it was even worse than US 290. So very significant delays and congestion. On both of those, there's an HOV lane running down the middle. And you can kind of see that on US 290. There's a little green line in the middle So there's the third line. That's showing the speeds on the HOV lane. And you'll notice that's green. So there's a significant travel time savings to these HOV lanes, obviously encouraging the use of carpooling. And also there's transit routes that run along both of these freeway facilities. And they have fairly direct routes. There's buses that run from the distant carpool lots with almost no stops all the way into downtown. So some very nice luxury coaches running from these park and rides to downtown. This is a picture of what we're talking about with the park and ride lots. And if you can imagine standing there taking this picture, behind me when I took this is a large, well, basically the southern half of this park and ride lot. And you're looking at the northern half of the park and ride lot. So it's separated by a small street. And the northern half of the park and ride lot that you're looking at also has the bus station, and we'll zoom in into that with the next slide. But that's where the buses stop to take people, and they'll get on the freeway very near here with what we call a T-ramp, where there's a direct connect where the transit and HOVs travel over the general purpose lanes and directly get on the HOV lane. And here we are at the transit stop, and you can see the buses on one side of the stop. And on the other side, there's a little nondescript sign just says passenger pickup and passenger drop off. And that is where the slugging occurs. And you'll see 3 people there in the lineup. Those are the 3 slugs that were there at that particular time, waiting for a car to come by. And there's nothing that says slugging, there's nothing that says casual carpooling, but that's where this occurs at Northwest Station, and the other park and ride lots were very similar. So the Northwest Freeway, as I said, there's during the peak of the peak, there are different rules than during the shoulders and the off-peak. But single occupant vehicles are never allowed, and buses are always free. During the very early AM, from 5 to 6:45, HOV 2+ is free. And after the peak of the peak, it turns into, again, HOV 2+ is free. But from 6:45 to 8, you need HOV 3+ to travel for free. And some people have joined the Quick Ride program, where they can be an HOV 2 and pay a $2 toll to travel on the HOV lane. So the requirements change during the day, which is a little confusing, but it's one thing I wanted to highlight was the HOV 3+ requirement, which seems to be a common feature amongst the 3 sites that have casual carpooling. The need for 3 people in the vehicle, and more importantly, the need for, there's 2 passengers or getting in with 1 driver. So it seems like maybe they outnumber the driver so you feel safer. Something along those lines is happening. So being a researcher here at Texas A&M, we wanted to look at and try and get a little more detailed information on what's going on. And we went out there and counted them a number of times. This was our first count of the slugs only, not the people picking them up, but just the passengers in June 2003. And you'll note from the graph, based on what time of day most of these people travel, the vast majority of this slugging occurs during the time where you need 3 people in the vehicle to travel for free, so from 6:45 to 8. And there is a few, some slugging going on before and after that, but the majority from 6:45 to 8. And you'll see if you add up the numbers there, we've got about 500 people slugging on that particular day. in the summer, the traffic congestion's a little less terrible in Houston than during the rest of the year. So we wanted to go back and count the number of people using slugging again in November, and we saw the numbers go up quite a bit. It's closer to 600 at this point, and that really isn't surprising considering the trends in Houston with the lighter traffic in the summer. We also, during this November time frame, surveyed the casual carpoolers and a lot of people using these freeways. And we handed out surveys to almost all the slugging folks there waiting in line, and most of them were willing to take a survey, and 40% of them returned a completed survey. So we had a pretty nice response rate and feel pretty comfortable that what our results look like should be representative. So, clicking the wrong button. There we go. We also looked to see how long it was going to take people to find a ride once they lined up in the casual carpool, and we found the average was just a little over 2 minutes of wait time. We looked at their characteristics as well, and I don't plan on going through each and every one of these numbers, but you have the slides you can download and take a look at. I wanted to highlight a few things, one being that the vast majority of the casual carpoolers, you'll see the third column over there, are folks that frequently casual carpool. Almost all of them are on a commute trip, getting to and from work. The other groups you see there, I've labeled it travelers. Those are folks on the general purpose lanes, traditional HOV on the HOV lane, so your traditional carpool, and the other one being transit riders. So we compared those three groups for interesting differences. One, we found the casual carpoolers were almost entirely on a commute trip. They were a little bit younger, so on average a little bit younger than the other groups. We also, kind of surprising, found it was a very even split, 50-50 male-female, when on the freeway itself, it's closer to 60% male, 40% female. So found a few interesting differences there. The thing I wanted to point out here on this page was the income, where they do have a slightly lower than average income, but it's certainly not only the people that can't afford to drive into downtown, and parking isn't too terribly expensive even in downtown Houston. So I don't think it's an income thing. It looks to be more of a saving time, and that came out when we asked them some questions about why they form casual carpools and tell us a little bit more about your carpooling. We asked them if they had ever traveled with the people they were traveling with that particular day. And being a relatively small group of 600, we thought maybe we would find some folks who had been traveling together, and we did. You'll see there about 2/3 had never traveled with those people before, but about 30% had traveled with them at least once. Now, we asked them why they wouldn't travel in a casual carpool, and the bus there is their option, or most of these people are driving to the park and ride lot, so they could take their own vehicle. The big reason for not casual carpooling is a long lineup in the casual carpool lane. And I'm kind of flipping through some of these numbers quickly. The last one I wanted to point out was the mode used for the evening return trip, and you'll see 66% taking the bus home. And we had some difficulty finding people taking casual carpooling home. I think that's where I go next. I've got a picture of that a little bit later. On the Katy Freeway, the one thing I really wanted to point out is prior to 2009, the HOV restrictions were very similar to what I just told you about on the US 290. Where in the peak of the peak, you needed 3+, other times it was 2+. In 2009, the Katy Freeway reconstruction was completed, and instead of a single HOV lane, or really a hot lane, they had 4 managed lanes in the center of the freeway. And these are more your traditional hot lane where a single occupant vehicle is allowed on the lane now and can pay a toll. HOVs are free in the peak period, but they pay in the off-peak, which is kind of strange, I know. Buses are always free as usual. So we went from a freeway where you had to be a carpool to use the HOV lane. Sometimes the carpools needed 3, sometimes they needed 2, but you always had to be a carpool to use the lane. You've now shifted to where a single occupant vehicle driver can pay their way on to use the managed lanes. And so, of course, that concerns folks that like the slugging opportunity, that now the drivers will simply pay to get onto the managed lane and not worry about picking up passengers. And here we are at the Kingsland Park and Ride lot, waiting to get on. And as I mentioned, it's very similar to the Northwest Freeway that we saw earlier. And I don't know if many of you recognize, there's Phil Winters, who is down there at Cutter and helping run this. He's getting into the car there, and we all had an opportunity to casual carpool. It's quite the experience getting into the stranger's car to head downtown. The return trip, the people hang out in the line near the buses, and occasionally, this is what we heard, we didn't get to witness it firsthand, but occasionally people will come up in the car and ask if anybody wants to drive back to the parking lot. And they might have the number of the bus somewhere on the side of their car. You'll see this is bus number 214. That goes back to the Northwest Freeway park and ride lot. So a car might come up with the 214 number on the side, and people who know and understand the slugging opportunity would get into that car. As I said, we didn't have time to stay and look for all that, but we hear that's what happens. And lastly, with the concern that now you are allowed to be a single occupant vehicle on the Katy Freeway, we've done a couple of counts out there of the number of slugs since the Katy Freeway has been under reconstruction. And our last one in June 2000, you'll see these numbers on the Katy Freeway, we counted a total of just 100 slugs out there, where it used to be up around 300 and some. So we haven't had an opportunity to ask travelers what's going on, but it's pretty clear the numbers have decreased quite a bit from our highs before, when people needed 2 or 3 people in the vehicle. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our moderator, and we'll head over to San Francisco.
Thanks, Mark, and great transition. Let's head over to San Francisco. Susan, tell us what's happening on your coast.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Yes, I'm Susan Heinrich, and I manage the 511 rideshare program in the San Francisco Bay Area. Just for a little background information, we call it 511 rideshare program because we're just one of the many programs and services that are offered through our larger 511 traveler information program in the Bay Area. So you'll see 511 on a lot of things throughout this presentation. Okay, so I thought I'd just give a little background and history on casual carpooling here in the Bay Area. And again, we call it casual carpooling. Can you all hear me? Is that better? I hear somebody can't hear. Okay, great. So here in the Bay Area, we call it casual carpooling. We don't call it slugging. I'm not really sure why, but it's a California thing, I guess. It probably started back around the 70s when there was a transit strike as well as the gas price crisis was happening. It's mostly only happening along one corridor, along the I-80 and across the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. I abbreviated that because it's such a long name, so you'll see throughout this presentation I just refer to it as the SFOBB. I thought I would just draw here on the map for you where it's happening. Essentially, you have San Francisco here. This is the downtown area. The East Bay is over here. And most all of the casual carpooling happens in the morning from the East Bay to downtown San Francisco. And then in the evening, the reverse happens. So it's kind of like funneling from the East Bay like this, and then over the Oakland Bay Bridge. Now, the rideshare program has mostly had a hands-off role over the years, and that's because the beauty of casual carpooling really doesn't need much of any kind of formal organizing, as Mark and Mark have pointed out. We think the reason why it works, there's a few reasons why it works. Mostly, the drivers save time and money. They save time because they can use the HOV lanes, and they save money because they save the tolls at the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. And the riders save time because they get to ride with a driver instead of on transit, which might make multiple stops along the way into downtown San Francisco. And then also save money because they get to save on the transit fares. And another main reason why it works is because there is pretty significant transit in that corridor. So there's a transit as a backup for the riders in case they don't find a ride. Okay, now while I said we didn't have much formal support of casual carpooling over the years, we have tried to keep tabs on what's going on, see if there's any lessons that we can learn, things like that. So we've done several studies over the years. I haven't been here actually for as long as we've been studying them, but the rideshare program has conducted studies in 1985, 87, 89, 98, and 2010. And we're going to be conducting another study actually at the end of April of this year. So in about a month from now, we're going to do a follow-up. I'll talk a little bit more about why in a little bit. The 1985 and the 1987 data that were collected, they're not as comprehensive as the future studies, so I'm just going to kind of focus on the 89, the 98, and the 2010. As a result, we don't have a good estimate of casual carpooling until the later date. And you'll see here I have a table that kind of shows that casual carpooling has remained really just a constant operation, really, over the years. We don't know how many people there might be in 2011. Like I said, we're going to be doing a study. The reason why we're doing it with such a quick turnaround, 2010 and then 2011, is that the Bay Area has just implemented a new toll on the Bay Bridge, and I'll talk a little bit about that more. But last year we did do a survey, and we asked the passengers and drivers if they would continue after this new toll went into effect. And 70% of drivers said they would continue casual carpooling, and 78% of passengers said they would continue. So we'll find out how true those answers were in about a month. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of the 2010 survey results and the comparison to the 98 survey. 27% of casual carpoolers had been doing it for 10 years or longer. In '92, they said only about 5% had been doing it for that long, and 15% had been doing it that long in '98. So it seems that the more time goes on, the more comfortable people get with the concept, and they keep doing it. Most people, 83%, do it 4 to 5 days a week. So it works for them, and that's their main mode of getting to work. 34% of casual carpoolers do it to save money, and back in '98, only 26% did it to save money. So I don't know, maybe the bad economy is impacting those numbers a little bit. 26% of casual carpoolers do it to save time. More did it to save time back in '98. There were other reasons that the casual carpoolers noted as their motivations, and I have a full study if anybody wants it. I can give you more information about that. 23% of drivers said they would drive alone if they could not pick up passengers. So that's pretty good, and because 54% said they would continue to drive alone back in '98. 78% of passengers said they would take transit if they couldn't ride, and so that is, the really key thing. A lesson learned here for us is one of the reasons why it works is because of the transit backup. And on that note, I just included a picture here to show you how these casual carpool lines are in really close proximity. You'll see they're right across this is just one line. They're right across the street there from the transit station. So I referred to this a couple of slides ago. In July of 2010, beginning July 1, the Bay Area, for the first time ever, started implementing a carpool toll. Now, it used to be that carpools could cross all of the bridges for free, but we are in need of money, like everywhere else in the country, and we have a lot of earthquake retrofitting that needs to be done on the bridges, specifically the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. And so we started implementing a new toll. Now I wrote down here's some of the impacts of these no longer free carpool tolls. 23% of the passengers said they would pay whatever the drivers would ask. 44% of the drivers said they would take whatever the passengers offer. And some follow-up research and discussions and news articles, it seems that in reality, passengers are generally paying about $1 or $1.25, but we will try to find out a bit more in our upcoming survey in April. Now, like I said, one of the reasons that we have been keeping tabs on casual carpooling is to see what kind of lessons that we could learn from it here in the Bay Area and potentially expanding it to other efforts. MCC, where I work, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, we have another program here called the Climate Initiative Program, and that program was basically a call for projects on ideas and projects and services that could improve the climate. And so we did actually receive a couple of proposals for real-time rideshare projects. And so what we decided to do is award one real-time rideshare pilot project that will be implemented in 3 counties. And that project has started. It's in the planning phases now. And so we're hoping to learn and potentially incorporate lessons from that pilot project, as well as the casual carpooling efforts that have been going on for 40 years or so. And we hope to implement those lessons learned into the 511 rideshare program that is offered regionally in all 9 counties. And so with that, I could take any questions, or I think maybe we'll send it back to the moderator and maybe questions for all of us.
Thanks, Susan. And again, a great transition. Yes. Thank you, audience, for your patience. Wasn't I right? I knew this was going to be a thought-provoking program. Mark, and Susan, you've given us lots to think about and talk about. And now those of you in the audience, it's your opportunity to get your questions answered. You have the option of either accessing the Q&A tab that's on the top of your screen and typing in a question, and I'll read typed in questions. You can also press, is it *8 on the phone, I think? And that is, in effect, raising your hand and letting us know you'd like to ask a question. If you do that, thank you, it was *8. If you do that, then the folks at Cutter can open your phone line and let you ask a question directly. I'd like to use moderator's prerogative and ask a question up front. Now that Mark, and Susan, you have looked at instant carpooling in a variety of cities, what does it take for it to be successful? What confluence of policies or infrastructure do you think you need for it to spring up and be successful?
I'll take a stab at that, if that's all right. This is Mark Oliphant. So what does it take? I mean, I think it's a very interesting question. The three cities are similar but not exactly the same, which actually is somewhat helpful in determining what it is that drives this. We think that HOV3 is more important than HOV2 because people feel more comfortable having two strangers in their car versus one. It's just sort of the randomness of the universe makes you feel more comfortable that way. And we found that if there's an HOV3, people don't take more than that, so they tend to take the minimum. I think you have to have aggregate time savings available by carpooling to be long enough to make it worth your while. So if I'm going to go park at the park and ride lot, I'm going to get out, I'm going to wait in line, and then I'm going to get dropped off maybe a block or two from my office, that has to outweigh whatever other inconvenience I'm up against. So I think having some dense housing nodes, people live in Woodbridge and so forth in D.C. There's very big bedroom communities, and then they work at these dense nodes downtown. Roslyn has many offices. Pentagon, I said 25,000. The Navy Yard, or K Street downtown have these very dense nodes of commuters, and then having this direct HOV link. In all three cities, you have a direct link of HOV lanes that pretty much point-to-point connect your home with your work, and that's really where the key is.
Okay. We have the online question queue just full of questions, and so I see several questions in the queue asking about safety. How is it that in this instant carpooling the participants deal with issues about driving with strangers, liabilities? Is the driver going to be a safe driver? Am I going to be white-knuckled all the way in? How do people who do this as their main mode deal with that issue?
I'll take the first stab at this one. And that's something we were all very interested in, and most of us who got in a car with any of the casual carpooling, any of the slugs, we asked them that question. And many of the slugs had indicated real reluctance to do this, but they had a friend or a coworker who indicated that they really liked this mode of travel. They felt safe doing it because that friend or coworker had done it for quite a while. And it seemed to be word of mouth enough to get people some comfort that someone they knew recommended this practice. Because even, I know for me, and we talked with some of the other members of the scan tour, I felt a little leery, especially getting in that first one, despite the fact we knew that this has a very good safety record, this mode of travel. Anyone want to add to that?
Susan, do you want to say anything? Or?
Oh, sure. You know, one of the interesting things that I've found in the Bay Area is that a lot of the passengers will, especially the women, they'll stand in line and they hope to get in a car with other women, or at least 2 other people. And some of the passengers even said, safety-wise, you know, if I see someone with a mobile phone in their hand, that if they seem to be a texter, they don't want to get in, and they'll make decisions kind of on the fly like that. As well, something I didn't mention in my presentation, but like in DC, there is also a volunteer-coordinated website here in the Bay Area where casual carpoolers can post notices about unsafe drivers, and I've seen things like, you know, don't get in the car with a green truck driver or something. And so I think there's a lot of communication and a really close community there that communicates on that website as well.
Well, I wanted to add on the flip side, we also saw one of the first people I got in the car with. It was a female, and she always gets into the back seat, and she just goes to sleep. She feels that comfortable. She angles herself to get the back seat, and the person in the back seat has less implied responsibility of doing any talking. So she just gets in and gets to sleep.
Loving it. I think we have a question on the phone, Phil.
Yes. Seattle, please go ahead with your question when you hear the beep. Oh, go ahead now.
Hello, this is Sid Pulowski from Seattle Rideshare. And who's got the best example where you don't have free capacity for parking at park and rides that makes this work? Because it seems that what everyone's shown is free parking at park and rides. Well, we don't have that. So what's the best example between the 3 of you of where there is no park and ride? Maybe it's just a shopping center or whatever. And if it is a shopping center, how did the people arrange to get their parking, or did they? Does anyone have an example like that?
This is Susan in San Francisco. I have sort of an example like that. In San Francisco, it's kind of a combination of, let's say, blessed locations that you can park in and non-blessed. We have actually 26 locations throughout the East Bay, and some of them are parking spaces at, you know, churches and malls and things like that. But some of them are just parking on street, or I even saw one that was like in a gravel, sort of almost like a ditch on the side of a road near a highway entrance ramp. So they kind of range. And there's not really any, like I said before, there's no formal coordination here of these parking locations as far as someone from, you know, a government agency or whatever, except for the city of San Francisco. You might have seen my picture at the very beginning of my presentation. The city of San Francisco actually has posted signs for the various East Bay locations for casual carpoolers to line up in and organize their lines better for going back to the East Bay in the PM. But as far as parking goes, I think that it's very organically organized.
Okay, I'm going to grab a question off the question queue. One of our participants would like to know if any of the presenters are aware of folks using mobile apps, social networking, or dynamic ride-sharing software to facilitate slugging. Susan's talked a little bit about, and all of you have talked about listservs and websites with tips, but how about some of these other tools?
Maybe I could say something about that. I have yet to see these popularly adopted yet, and I don't know quite what it is. We haven't reached the tipping point yet. Now, there is interest out there. The federal government's interested. They are currently doing something in Santa Barbara. That was last year's value pricing pilot program, is helping to fund a dynamic ride-sharing pilot with the university there. And then I know also there in the Seattle area, there's a pilot funded by the state with Avago, who's a company that offers this software. But just on people's own, I haven't seen it yet. But you know, there are some good opportunities, and you know, here in the D.C. area, there's so many federal workers, and federal workers can receive a subsidy for using public transit, and you can use that for a van pool right now, but not a carpool. I would really love to see the policy change so that even part of that potential subsidy could be used toward a carpool, and then I see almost instant adoption of this mode because it really is so convenient for so many people. So there's some great software out there. It just needs the right incentive, or it needs the right spark to get going.
Okay. One of our other participants would like you guys to change hats for a minute and answer the question, what's the reaction from transit providers about slugs? Are the transit systems happy that there's slugging going along in the same corridors, or do they see that as siphoning off riders that would make their services more viable?
You want to try that, Susan?
Sure. It's hard for me to speak for transit operators since I'm not one. I have heard there is concern from the transit operators here in the Bay Area because they have to plan for more riders on the return trip in the PM than they do on the inbound trips in the AM. However, you know, you just don't hear much discussion of it anymore, or at least lately, because I think it's kind of an accepted notion that casual carpooling is here to stay, and so I think the transit providers just kind of have just been planning around it.
And we asked that question in Houston as well, and I know when I initially looked at this 7-8 years ago, there's a fairly strong negative opinion of the slugging, but nothing was being done about it. And this time around, they had a somewhat positive opinion of this, except, of course, that would change if the park and ride lots began to fill up and they needed those spaces for their buses. They had indicated that their feelings towards slugging would probably change at that point. But right now is fairly positive, or the idea being we're all working together to make this the best transportation system possible, and this is a very effective way for some people to get to work.
Okay. I think you've made it fairly clear, all of you, that no one is setting up these systems, that they are sort of springing up, and they're not organized by anybody, or not organized intentionally by a government group. But clearly, for example, San Francisco, the city is trying to facilitate by posting some signs for return destinations. Somebody posted those signs at the transit stations at the park and rides in Houston. So are there issues here where a public agency is helping in some way with signage or whatever, and liability issues? Do they then incur some liability for a system about which they have no control?
Can I say something about this? So in general, your public agencies that do the typical ride matching, you know, usually through your metropolitan planning organization or council of governments or something, they are protected because all they're doing is showing you potential rideshare partners, but they're not endorsing any single person. And so here it's the same thing. You know, what's the difference between me putting up a sign that says wait here to slug to Potomac Mills versus putting up a website that says, hey, fill out your name and address and you can we'll send you a list of people in your area. You decide if you want to carpool with them. There is this fear, and I find it on all kinds of different levels, local level, state level, and so forth, that, oh boy, if we get involved in this and someone gets in an accident or whatever, we're going to be liable. But really, it's much the same as all the organized ride sharing that you're actually mandated to do at that metropolitan level. It's too bad that attitude is there, but I see it changing a little bit in several locations here at the Pentagon, in Roslyn, Arlington County. They have signs up. Actually, here at the Navy Yard, we used to have slug lines on the yard before pre-September 11th, and those signs are still up, so we put signs up. And then San Francisco, likewise, they have put up signs for the afternoon locations. And so it's really a balance of just doing enough to help out without getting involved at all, because it's a beautiful system that is free of bureaucracy, and you can keep it that way, but you can also just kind of help at the same time.
Steer it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of our participants would like to know whether any of you have seen any data on formal carpool arrangements resulting as a result of slugging.
I haven't seen any formal data, but one of my favorite stories from our trip was someone I casual carpooled in with in San Francisco, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and there's a car seat in the back seat. So I figure my way to strike up a conversation with the driver is to start talking about kids, because I got a kid in a car seat in my seat. Turns out the car seat was not for his kid. It was for a kid of someone he met while casual carpooling. He found out that she lived fairly nearby, and now they commonly carpool together, and he's bought a car seat for when they carpool. So it's one anecdotal instance, but they formed a fairly good carpool there. 4 days a week he drives with that other person, and the one day I happen to be there is the day he picks up slugs.
I love it. I love it. We have a couple of people asking about where you can imagine instant carpool springing up in other areas, and I'm going to put two questions together. Can you imagine casual carpooling working in an area that does not have, one, either an HOV lane or two, parallel transit service?
I'll speak for myself and say no. I think you need those two things.
This is Susan. I think you need those things as well, or at least some kind of incentive. If it's not mandated HOV 2 or 3, some kind of a pricing.
Yeah.
Some kind of a pricing mandate.
You need a time or a money saving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, I'm flipping through our list of questions, looking for ones that we haven't asked yet. If you had an area that had potential, so there was folks could imagine some time and some or money savings. There was transit service available. How might you start it off? You have the conditions; it just hasn't started yet.
I'll chime in. This is Mark Oliphant. One thing I wonder about is perhaps an emergency or something. You know, I'm sure we're all aware that gas prices are slowly creeping up. We know they peaked back in '09 and then went way low, and now they're just slowly every week getting a little higher. And I think that could have certainly an effect on it. When I did my research for my master's project, that was when gas was at an all-time high, and a lot of people mentioned, well, those slug lines seem to be a lot longer right now, or there was some mention of maybe exchanging money when gas got to be $4.25 a gallon. But also, you know, an emergency situation or something like that. I know it was maybe 2 years ago there was this volcano in, I want to say Iceland that erupted and none of the flights could work. Well, at that time, some of these ride-sharing websites got absolutely flooded with traffic because people needed to find a new way. And so, you know, I wonder if there was a transit strike in a certain place or a, you know, another embargo or something like that. And, I mean, just off the top of my head, I can see Los Angeles and Seattle as strong locations for this to possibly take place because they have a lot of the same infrastructure.
A lot of the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have taken ourselves very quickly to the end of the time that we agreed we would spend together. So first off, I would like all of our speakers to hear the roaring applause that's coming rolling at you from all across the country for your thought-provoking and dinner table providing conversation today. It isn't always that I can talk about my work at dinner, but slugging and body snatching might very well catch people's attentions this evening. So I've learned a great deal, and I know everyone else in the audience has too. Thank you very much. Those of you in the audience, thank you for your interest and your attention. We'd like to ask one more thing. We'd very much like to ask each of you to please take a few minutes to fill out the evaluation form. That helps us understand whether the programs that we're bringing you are meeting your needs or whether we're off target a little bit, and we'd very much like to be as on target as we possibly can be. A little advanced advertising that we are working on a couple of future NET conferences, most likely for perhaps June and in the fall, on perhaps on incorporating transportation demand management into the planning process, one session, and perhaps another session on telework as a solution to business sustainability issues. So a couple of things to kind of look forward to as we're going forward. I'd like to thank my partner, Phil Winters, and his team at the Transit Research Center at Qatar for joining us and bringing you this NET conference. Thanks again, and have a great day.